Welcome into the Aftershock. I am your host tonight. I'm also an emergency sub. Robert Jonas with a last-second emergency, unable to be at the stadium. I am dropping off my son for college and did not watch much of this game at all. So I am going to basically set up Alex to tell you all about it and to break it down. I take that back. I did get to watch probably about 15 minutes of the first half and the last 10 minutes of the game or so. But Alex, you're there at PayPal, a 1-1 draw, not what the Earthquakes wanted, but actually it looks like it was a pretty exciting soccer game from everything I saw.
Yeah, Jamon, I appreciate you coming on as a super sub in the last minute here tonight. You don't need to have watched the game. Jamon's intuition in the box in the final third is so good. He knows where the ball was, where it's going to be automatically. Sure. Tonight was altogether, I don't think it was a bad performance from the Earthquakes. I think they grew through this game. I think the second half performance that they had was one of the better halves of soccer that they've played in the last few months. But Dane St. Clair came up big in goal for Minnesota United. Maybe the first goalkeeping performance I've seen rival Daniel at PayPal Park this season. But then ultimately, they weren't able to get that winning goal. It felt like they could, but they didn't get that winning goal. And I don't think that a draw does much for them in this situation, Jamon. This is a home game against a playoff rival that they needed to win. And this match, if you look at the playoff odds, really hurts their odds getting being held to a draw here tonight. They, if you look at the sports playoffs websites, they were at 70% chance of making the playoffs, a good chance of making the playoffs. This puts them down back into the mid 60s with other results around the league. That could get even worse. This was a performance that makes me start to wonder whether the playoffs are really a lock at this point. I think this is a kind of game that they needed to win in order to cruise in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with you. I mean, just by nature of the standings, but the fact that they had back-to-back home games, the opportunity to take 6 points at home against their arch rivals, the Galaxy, and now against a team that sits, or at least coming into the night, sat one place ahead of them in the standings, having previously been sitting in 10th place. And this felt like a real missed opportunity because now the Quakes are going to play Minnesota United again, and they're going to have to go on the road, and they're going to have to get a result if they're going to want to, push themselves ahead of them in the standings, and they're going to have to get results in other games. So that opportunity to grab 6 points at home now completely gone. 1 point and 4 points out of the last 4 games. 1 point per game is not going to get the job done, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't won since the Leagues Cup break, and that's
Vancouver.
Sorry, they won against Vancouver. They haven't won at home.
They didn't play well,
since
but
the
they
League
won.
Cup break. They haven't been convincing. I guess the reason I forgot about the Vancouver game is because they got shellacked in that game as well. I don't think they've been convincing, dominant winners in any of the games since Leagues Cup. And their momentum is tailing off. It reminds me of the way that Matias Almeida's teams often tailed off in the fall. And that's really a concerning trend. I think the way that the Quakes started this game was once again on the back foot. They allowed a goal after 3 minutes. And they were getting pummeled again. This is the word that we keep coming back to that Luchi Gonzalez doesn't like, but has been true in these last 3 games, is they're getting pummeled right at kickoff, and it's not been good enough. They're not starting games well. And tonight, the people doing the pummeling, and everyone in the chat here knows, was Reynoso and Pukki. And those are 2 fantastic players, Minnesota's 2 marquee players. And San Jose didn't really, in that first half, have a plan to deal with them. Reynoso was giving Gruezo a heck of a time. Every time Reynoso got on the ball, he was able to turn Gruezo, get in behind, break that line, and put in a dangerous ball to Pukki, who, coming from the Premier League a few years ago, obviously is going to get the better of Tanner Beeson and put the ball in the back of the net. That's exactly how they scored their first goal. That happened 3 or 4 times in the first half. Honestly, the Quakes were lucky not to go further behind in that first half. And Kat's right here. The Quakes were lucky. Without Daniel in goal, they would have been behind in that first half. Daniel came up with a couple of huge stops in the first half to keep them in it. And I want to give them credit because they grew into this game well. The second half performance was much, much stronger. In the first half, they didn't have control of the midfield. They weren't able to get the ball to the wings quickly. But the second half, they were able to do that. They got control of the midfield. They were able to get more movement. It felt like they weren't at a huge disadvantage anymore. And then they got the ball out wide, were able to get dangerous 1v1s and had a couple really, really strong chances. I think you look at the XG tonight, and that's probably what I'm expecting Luchi Gonzalez to mention in the post-game press conference. I'd be really surprised if he didn't mention the XG tonight, because I'm pulling it up right now, but the Quakes were neck and neck.
The Quakes, according to Opta at least, the Quakes kind of lost the XG battle for most of the game. They trailed because they gave up the early goal. And let's get back to the goals here in just a minute, because I think there's a bit of a story on both sides, with the goals that did happen. But 1.7 expected goals to 2 for Minnesota. Here's the wild thing to me, not really having, watched enough of this game, but 18 shots for the Quakes tonight to 14 for Minnesota. 6 shots on target, 3 of those by Cade Cowell for the Earthquakes versus 7 for Minnesota. So the keeper's very busy in this one. And whatever parts of this game I got to see, there were shots. There was something going on either side of the pitch. There was a lot. I got to see both goals almost accidentally, just in terms of like when I was able to check my phone and kind of check in for a bit. So let's talk about the opening goal, because Reynoso, we mentioned the other night, at the very end of the show, because Ricky Puig, gave the Quakes fits, and we talked about, Reynoso is another one of those players that can give the Quakes fits. The MLS player of the week had 2 goals at home midweek against the Rapids. And tonight, 3 minutes into the game, finds a connection to Pukki on a breakaway and just kind of spins and finds a pass, that only a creative playmaker like Reynoso can find. And, catches him all the way to the other side of the field, right off of Beeson's back shoulder. And Pukki puts it, between Daniel's legs, careens off the inside of his left leg, it looked like, and into the back of the net just 3 minutes in. That's got to take the wind out of the sails of the stadium in a home game like this. And it puts the Quakes on the back foot for 2 games in a row, Alex.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that wasn't an isolated incident. That kind of play through the middle was happening over and over again. And I think the issues that we've seen for the Quakes in the last few games are really stemming from this midfield, because I don't like how flat they've been in these last few games. I don't like the way that Ewell and Grezzo have not been able to connect with Montero. It almost feels, Jamon, what I was saying in the patron Slack during the game is it feels like they're playing an empty bucket 4-4-2. It feels like
There's some
playing
comments about
Dom
that
Khmir
in the chat too. Yeah.
I'm so surprised, because that's not the way they were playing at the beginning of the season. The beginning of the season, they had so much more movement in the midfield. At the beginning of the season, Jackson Ewell was pushing so much further forward. He was basically playing as a box-to-box midfielder. You saw Jackson Ewell putting goals in the back of the net, getting the ball at the top of the box in zone 14. When was the last time Jackson Ewell got that far up the field? I can't remember, because right now he's not willing to push the tempo. He's not willing to venture forward. He's getting caught just flat with Grezzo, and they're late to challenges. They're late to the ball. They're too infrequently giving up way too much space. I don't understand what has happened to this midfield, Jamon, because in the last few games, it's kind of lost all sense of coherency and in the sense that they have a plan to attack and get the ball into dangerous spaces.
Yeah, well, so the fans alternately tonight are kind of putting a lot of the blame in the central midfield between Jamiro and Jackson Ewell, and to some extent even with Gruezo, with some fans commenting, look, they only want Gruezo or Ewell on the field at any one time. The both of them feels like they're taking the ability to be creative out of the center of the pitch. How did you see it?
Yeah, it feels like a partnership that is getting a little stale. It feels like the classic Dom Khmir partnership between Fatai Alashe, Anibal Godoy, or any one of those those double pivots that Dom Kinnear played with. It doesn't feel like they are dynamic enough. It doesn't feel like they're surprising opponents. It feels like they're really easily shut down, and they're kind of just shuttling the ball back and forth in the first half. And so I 100% agree with that read. And, I do want to give them credit. Again, they improved in the second half. I think Jamir Montero got way more involved in the second half. And ultimately, maybe it's not even Ewell and Gressa's fault, right? Ultimately, we've seen them play well together. I think they're both solid players who've had good runs and good stretches this season. I think that, it might be Jamir Montero, and Jamir Montero just running hot and running cold. He's a player who's an opportunist. He's a player who's going to try to find these little places to press, apply pressure, win the ball in transition, play a ball in behind. He's going to make counterintuitive runs to get in open spaces, but he's not like Jack Skane. He's not going to be a motor in the midfield. He's not going to be shuttling up and down the field. He's not going to be leading the press in any kind of consistent way. And so, I think if the Quakes had a guy like that, maybe we were hoping Nico Shakiris would be that player this season. He's not been that player this season. If they had a guy who could do that, maybe the partnership between you and Gressa would make more sense. But right now it feels like there's a big empty space in that midfield and nobody's filling it. And Luchi Gonzalez doesn't really know what to do about it. He could put more numbers in the midfield. He could switch to a 3-5-2, which we saw him do, and which I'd like to see him experiment with more, because it's the time of the season where they need to mix things up because things are getting stale. So I'd like to see Luchi try to proactively solve this issue rather than what's happening now, which is that the Quakes are kind of going through the same thing every game. It doesn't feel much different than the past few games that they've played. And Jamon, if I could pull up the XG chart here, I actually think that it's super sort of illustrative of the game we're playing. You can see the Quakes didn't have XG in the first half. Up to minute 45, Minnesota were dominating. The Quakes were lucky, frankly, to get that goal from Cade Cowell, the deflection, because it was an incredibly low XG chance. And then the second half, you can see the second half, they immediately start getting shots on target. They immediately start pressing. They immediately start looking dangerous. And ultimately, they end the game about the same XG as Minnesota. And I think a draw is a pretty fair result here based on the balance of those two halves.
I want to get to Cade Cowell's performance tonight. But before we do, you brought up, the change that happened, in the first part of the second half. And that's the part of the game that I didn't get to see any of. What is there a particular adjustment or anything that you noticed that you think propelled the Quakes to come out of the locker room and be able to start shooting like that? Obviously, didn't get anything in the back of the net, but looks like they were on the front foot today as compared to really being on the back foot like they were against the Galaxy on Wednesday.
Yeah, they were playing more direct in the second half. I don't know if that's an instruction that Luchi Gonzalez gave to his team. We're going to ask him when he joins us in the post-game press conference very shortly. But they were playing a lot more direct. You saw in the first half, there was one play that really, really frustrated me, Jamon, which was the Quakes. Tanner Beeson put in a good challenge in the back line to stop a counterattack. He basically trucked, I think it was Reynoso, left him on the floor, then picked his head up, played Jamir Montero, and Jamir Montero had acres of space in front of him. He had runners in behind with Espinosa, Cowell, and Abobasi running at the back line. And he kind of waltzed on the ball and then saw that Reynoso, whoever the Minnesota player was down. And then he kicked the ball out. And I understand there's an element of sportsmanship there, but it wasn't like a clearly leg-breaking tackle. The Minnesota player got up immediately afterwards, was clearly just exaggerating it. And regardless, he had a dangerous counterattack shaping up in front of him. He had acres of space. And to me, that showed just a little bit of like a lack of urgency in playing on the counterattack and moving the ball forward quickly there. And that changed in the second half. You saw right at the beginning of the second half, Jackson Ewell put in a great ball in behind for Espinosa. Espinosa wasn't able to finish the chance. But that was kind of the impetus, was getting the ball forward quickly, getting the ball into Espinosa, getting the ball out wide to Cade Cowell. I actually think that this was a pretty solid game from Cade Cowell, and I think that he deserved the goal. Obviously it's a deflection. Obviously there's a high degree of luck there, but he was making dangerous runs, and he was had a few good one-on-one opportunities. And I think at this season, he deserves a little bit of luck, Jamon, because he's got lots of shots that haven't found the back of the net when they could have. He had an excellent shot that was saved miraculously by Dane St. Clair in the second half. He deserved the goal tonight, even though it came on a lucky chance. And I think it's a really, really important goal for him to get at this stage in the season, because what happened yesterday, the European transfer window closed, and that move to Bologna that he was looking at, the move to Europe that he was hoping for this summer, fell through. And I'm glad that he responded well tonight, and I'm glad that he was rewarded with a goal tonight, because I could see a situation like the situation with Benji Kikanovic, in which he's denied a move to Europe that he's interested in, he wants to do at this stage in his career, and he responds poorly, and he puts his head down, and he feels stuck here in San Jose. I could see that situation. I'm worried that situation will happen, but tonight was a good sign that he's responding well, that maybe he can put in 3-4 more goals like that towards the end of the season, and interest from Europe will renew itself. And clearly that's what Chris Leach is hoping. I think Cade scoring a goal tonight kind of saves Chris Leach's neck a little bit here, because if Cade came out and put up a huge stinker tonight, I think people would be wondering, why did Chris Leach not pull the trigger? I think we have to reserve a little judgment on that. I think Chris Leach is putting a lot on the line. He's putting a lot of pressure on Cade to deliver in the back half of this season.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched Cade, and again, I didn't see enough of this game, but at the moments I saw it, it seemed like he was trying to make things happen tonight. Now, I think a couple people in the chat are going like, well, he scored the goal and then he was almost trying too hard. He was, gave him too much confidence, and he was doing things that maybe he shouldn't. But, I think I would prefer a very active Cade Cowell that the defense has to do something with and has to be able to account for, than the Cade Cowell we've seen over the past few weeks. And he did get called into the national team again. And, there's quite a few injuries that probably are the reason that he got this particular call in. But you can see he's not that far down the list. His opportunity to be able to play in World Cup qualifying, his opportunity to be able to play in the next World Cup in the US and Canada and Mexico, is there. If he can take advantage of these situations and start to turn it around and actually, be able to take some of this XG and be able to convert it into goals. Why do you say no, Alex?
Jamon, there is a long way between Cade Cowell right now and Cade Cowell playing in the 2026 World Cup. If Cade Cowell had a chance of playing in the 2026 World Cup, he would be in Europe. He would have moved to Bologna. No questions asked. Cade Cowell needs to focus on
hang on. There's
scoring.
A lot.
Jamon, Cade Cowell needs to focus on getting a few goals in the back of the net for the Quakes.
Well, he does.
There's been a lot of pressure put on Cade Cowell. There have been super high expectations right at the beginning of his career. He's talked about how he struggled with that pressure, how he struggled with people, the reality that he is experiencing and where he's at, and the things that people have been saying and comparisons people have been making to top European players online. That's difficult for him to handle. And I don't think it's productive to be talking about where Cade Cowell is going to be in 4 years and whether he could be with the US World Cup team in 4 years. He needs to focus on staying grounded and being here in San Jose and scoring a few goals first, and so that he can put himself in a good position to move to Europe in the winter.
My point is that he's already in a good position with the national team. When he shows up for the national team, he shows up and he scores. He had 5 shots. He had 5 shots tonight. The last time he had 5 shots, Alex, was in the Gold Cup. That's the only other time in this entire season, in 2023, that he's had that many shots, was in the Gold Cup until tonight. He shows up for the national team. He plays well. If he can put together the club appearances in addition to what he's been showing for the national team, that's when he's going to get those opportunities to be able to at least get a call in for a World Cup qualifier. And then depending upon what he does with that, I don't think he's that far away. I just think he needs to show the consistency that he knows he also needs to show.
And I think he needs to develop a left foot because he had a really good chance.
Looks like we're going to the presser, and we're going to start with Jackson Ewell. And we'll come back. We'll talk about the K-Pen after that.
101st match with the club. We'll start with a question from Alex Morgan.
Hey, Jackson. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's good to speak with you. Can you talk about what happened at halftime and the adjustments that you guys made at halftime? Because if you look at the XG for tonight, you guys were struggling a little bit more to create chances in the first half. And then in the second half, it seems like you guys responded very well. We're playing more directly, had a bunch of opportunities. Dane St. Clair came up with a few good saves in goal for Minnesota. But you guys were able to be more in control in that second period. Is that how you experienced the game? And I'm curious, what were the things you were thinking about at halftime?
Yeah, I think definitely you could tell by the chances that we were created more in the second half. I think we were at home. We wanted to push the game a little more. I don't think we came out with the right urgency. I think that kind of built up throughout the game. And I think our message at halftime was to be a little bit more aggressive, get more runs in behind, get more balls in behinds. I think, with Cade and Christian and Jeremy's speed, we wanted to open up the field a little bit more. And then I think we did a good job of recovering more balls in their half and in the midfield and transitioning quick. So I think we were unlucky to not get a goal, but I think we're moving in the right direction still. Just looking to be more clinical in and around the box.
We'll take a next question from Titus Wilkerson.
Hey, Jackson, thanks for speaking with us. I know tonight all the talk is going to be around St. Clair and a lot of his saves, but I don't know if you could also just speak on Daniel and some of his huge saves throughout the game and how important those ended up being in keeping this game tied.
Yeah, I think he's made some really good saves for us the whole year. I think he's a great presence in the box. He can play well out as well, and he makes saves. I think it was a good goalkeeper match. Both goalkeepers are playing really well, and and we need that in the stretch that we're in to get as much points as possible.
We'll next go to Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Jackson. Obviously, you guys were looking to get 3 points tonight. You have back-to-back opportunities here at home to be able to secure some much needed points at home and didn't get it. How does that then put urgency on the coming games in this schedule? There is really no easy game in the West, this year. So clearly, the sense of urgency has to be pretty high at this point, isn't it?
Muted.
We spoke after Leagues Cup, and we knew that we kind of had a balance of kind of equal home and away, and we wanted to take advantage of these two games. But like you said, teams in the West are really good and made some strong acquisitions in the summertime, and unfortunately we didn't get the wins that we wanted. But we're a team that is going to keep insisting. I think we've started the season well, and we've been playing well the whole year, and we're going to keep doing what we've been doing and keep trying the things that we've been trying because like you can see, I think we dominate a lot of the game. We create chances, we create opportunities, and it's about finishing those chances. And we know that we can't wait to the end and to the last days to kind of get points. So we want to take advantage as much as possible. And right now we're looking ahead to DC and going there with the mentality of getting 3 points.
We'll close with a final question from Alex Morgan.
Hey, Jackson, thanks for taking another. I'm curious, how you guys are talking about the playoffs and how that's evolved over the course of this season. Obviously the odds of you guys making the playoff kind of bounce up and down over the course of the year. And maybe a few weeks ago it was looking like a lock, and now maybe it's less certain. And you guys need to pick up a few points. So I'm curious how you guys are thinking about that. If you can hear me, did you lose me?
our feeling in the locker room is not if we make playoffs, it's when. And we're fighting for a home field advantage the first games. I think it's important for us to be in the top slot, and that's our mentality, and that's the kind of team that we believe we are. So we go into each game ready to fight and ready to win. And these last 7 games will be our challenge and will be our test to see if we're able to accomplish it. But we have full faith in each other and in the staff and in the group that we're gonna accomplish our goals and we'll be there at the end of the year.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. We will be joined by head coach Luchi Gonzalez for questions in Spanish and English shortly.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so there you got Jackson Ewell joining. I was not supposed to be asking a question in the press conference tonight, but I guess since I'm on there, they're going to have me do it. We'll wait for Alex to get back here, but clearly, Jackson Ewell. Here we go. We got you, Jackson Ewell. Clearly feeling a bit disappointed with the results here, but he talks about continuing to insist, on their particular style of play. Alex, there's just a lot of criticism going on in the chat, and we get this after losses, we get this after disappointing draws like that, but a lot of criticism of this style of play. It's difficult sometimes to see how goals are going to come this year as compared to last year, when this team was giving up a lot of goals, but they were scoring a lot. And, you score 50 and you give up 69 and you have a negative 19 goal differential, but, the games are pretty exciting. And, under Luchi, these games are very tight. You see a lot of 1-0, 1-1 type games. I mean, I guess the game against the Galaxy the other night was about as wild as it gets in the Luchi era, being a 3-2 type game. Some people are saying Jackson's not playing aggressive enough. What say you?
Yeah, it's hard to say, Jamon, that at this point, what the Quakes need to do to regain the spark and the momentum that they had at the beginning of the year. I encourage everyone who's thinking this team is worthless, this team is not gonna make the playoffs, because it's easy. I don't blame fans for thinking that about the Earthquakes. It's felt that way so often over the last 9 years about this team. So I completely understand that sentiment, but I know that, that is not this team this year. And I know that because if you look back, I encourage everyone to watch the game against LAFC at Levi Stadium, because I think that was quintessential Earthquakes, what Luchi Gonzalez is trying to achieve. Playing dynamically, being able to press really high, being able to sit back deep when they need to, being able to go through the middle really quickly and then get the ball wide to Espinosa. We know they can do that, and they haven't been doing that in the last few weeks, and it feels stale. And that's where Luchi Gonzalez needs to get this team back to. And I think that he can. We've seen him adjust multiple times over the course of this season. We've seen them go through bad streaks defensively, fix those defensive issues, bad streaks at home, fix those home issues, bad streaks away, fix those away issues. And we've seen Luchi Gonzalez adapt and evolve over the course of this season. And so I'm kind of waiting for that to happen. And time is starting to run out, but I do think that Luchi Gonzalez has that capacity to change and has that capacity to improve this team, because we've seen him try new solutions. We've seen him add new pieces. So I don't want to give up on the Earthquakes at this stage. I know after 2 home losses, it's can start to feel a little pessimistic. But I think that Luchi Gonzalez is still moving this team in a net positive direction.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now, and it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating. What we're seeing right now is a team that is really a mid-table team. And when you're seeing a mid-table team, the reason a team ends up in that spot is because they're not as good as they are when they look good, and they're not as bad as they are when they look bad. They're somewhere in between, and those ups and downs of a full season with a mid-table team is extremely frustrating, because that team can play better than they are, on nights like tonight, or particularly nights like LA. I thought what I saw of the game tonight was pretty good overall. I thought it was fairly attractive soccer. I thought that, there was a lot of progression, a lot of attempts to try to get in behind the lines. I thought what, Cade was doing and largely what Espinoza were doing were good things. They were pushing hard at the back line and really kind of forcing questions. I just generally think that the runs that they make in the box are just really, really poor. I don't think that there's a lot of really good instruction to these players as to, what they need to do in order to be able to make the defense kind of guess. And I think it comes off as very predictable. They don't really have the kill shots that a lot of teams have that create goals in open play. And this team has struggled with that this season.
I think the problem is not necessarily in the box, Jamon, because tonight in the second half, we saw the Quakes get like 5 golden opportunities in the box. We saw Cade Cowell on the turn have basically a sitter with his left foot that he kind of scuffs. If Cade Cowell can get a left foot, I think he'd be a completely different player. And this Earthquake season would be fairly different because, we've seen him get the ball out wide. And if he can take the ball with one touch and then drive a shot on target with his left foot, I think the Quakes would have a lot more goals this season. So that's unlucky that they don't put that away. You had Cade Cowell have another opportunity, his right foot that Dane St. Clair turns wide after some good cutbacks and good combinations in the box. You had Jeremy Abobase's great run and great header from like 2 yards out that Dane St. Clair somehow turns wide. You had good movement in the box tonight. You had people getting on the ball in the box.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your patience.
Target.
Luchi Gonzalez was brought to an issue that he has to resolve. He will be available as soon as he is able to.
And we're hearing now that Luchi Gonzalez will be with us shortly. So we're going to stay tuned for that. But I think the problem is actually a little bit further back. I think it's at the top of the box where I don't think the Quakes know what to do. When the Quakes get the ball on the top of the box, I'm not confident that they're going to get a shot on target out of it. They get the ball on the top of the box 100 times in a game, and they're not able to create chances from it. They're so predictable, cycling the ball from one winger into the middle to the next. It feels like they never think about, overloading one side and playing back into that side. Jeremy Abobase's movement, I think, could be improved. I think it's at the top of the box that they struggle, and where Jackson Ewell really could be taking more shots. I think in the Quakes press box tonight, every single time Jackson Ewell got on the ball at the top of the box, everyone was muttering under their breath that he needs to shoot because he gets a lot of errant balls of crosses pinged back out to him, and he never bothers to look at a shot. The only person who shoots from the top of the box is Christian Espinoza, and you have Miguel Trauco when he's up there, but those are the only 2 guys that are willing to put it on top, put a shot on target from the top of the box. If you have 2 or 3 guys who can whip a shot in, you're forcing the defenders to step up. You're forcing, people to make tough decisions, and then your space opens up for other things. But they don't know what to do with the ball at the top of the box and in zone 14 where they need to be the most dangerous. And Jamiro Montero, I think people are saying they think it's his best performance of the season tonight. I don't know about that. I have a really hard time evaluating his performances because he's such an opportunist, because he shows up in weird random spaces. And sometimes he has, 2 fantastic moments in a game just because he's in the perfect spot. And sometimes he doesn't do anything at all. And it feels like, what the heck is he doing? But he's not in the top of the box. He tends to float into the wide areas way more. He's not, orchestrating play and ripping shots and having neat combinations at the top of the box. Nobody's at the top of the box doing that for the Quakes.
I think you and I are actually saying the same thing, but we're saying it with a different context. So what you're saying is, and we agree, they need that creative playmaker in the middle. Neither Jackson nor Montero are that creative playmaker. We have seen it a little bit with Jack Skane, right? We have seen it maybe a little bit more the other night than tonight, but it's still a couple decent situations tonight for Nico Shakiris in terms of his creativity around the box. Again, not as good tonight as he was, against LA, I thought. But there was a couple passes. And he didn't get a lot of time, let's be fair. So, yes, this is definitely a place where they need to go. What I'm talking about is what I think Luchi is trying to do, which is to use the wingers to be able to get behind and play shots across the box, like in effect cutbacks or at least square balls along from the sides of the box or just outside the box. And from that perspective, if that's the plan is to get cutbacks from Christian Espinoza, let's say, and that's the game plan. The problem is they're not making the right runs to be in a position to be able to do that. I saw 2 or 3 situations where the ball goes across the box. There's no one around because they all made whatever other runs and nobody is where they actually need to be. And they very rarely make a run to the near post. They did the other night when Jackson Yule did and scuffed the shot. They could have put them up 3-1 in that situation. And I'm like, yeah, finally, there's a run to the near post on one of those cutbacks. If nothing else, throw a dummy up and make the defense freeze for half a second.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that oftentimes they're indecisive with their runs. Oftentimes it feels like they're kind of just like waiting for the ball to find them. And if they made a hard near post run, they'd get on it more. You also see situations where the ball is trailing across the box and there's no far post run. You also see situations where there's no trailing runner and the ball bobbles out to the top of the box and nobody's there either. So I agree with you. They could be more decisive there. Again, I think it speaks to the fact that they just don't have players at the top of the box who are making those runs. They don't have central players. Grezzo's not doing it because he's not that kind of player. Yule's not doing it. And I don't really know why he stopped doing it.
He could be.
He could be doing it. And Montero is not that kind of player, and he really should be doing it, and it's not. So if the Quakes had one player at the top of the box who could be a creative player, get shots on, I think this team would look completely differently. And maybe it's just a matter of waiting for Jack Skane to come back. Maybe the answer has been Jack Skane this whole time. But I think it goes to show next season, that's the key spot where they need to add over the winter is that they need to get another player in there. I think they probably need to move Jamiro Montero and get a true number 10. Because at this point, Jamiro Montero kind of feels like a luxury surplus. Because you can see how great of a player he is and what he can offer, but he's not the player that they need to make this system run. And I don't know if you can justify, keeping him on board just for the few moments in a game or in a season in which he'll pop up and do something beautiful.
Yeah, and for me, the player that you really kind of want being able to make like a near post run is usually the striker. And when the problem with Abobasi making that particular run is he's left-footed. So he wants a ball that goes across his body and making a near post run where he's going to have to use a right foot. It's not to his strength. For me, Alex, that tells me, you know what we need to see? We need to see that 3-5-2. Put a right-footed player on that right side who's willing to make that run. Let that ball run across, and Abobasi can have the left foot as it comes across.
Jamon, you know what it tells me? It tells me that we need crosses from the left side. You're assuming that the only way that can happen, you're assuming crosses are only coming from the right side from Christian Espinoza. No, you need crosses coming from the left side. And I think Cade Cowell's service is genuinely good. I think that his vision is actually surprisingly, when he has his head up in the center of the field, I think it's pretty decent. And I don't know why Cade Cowell has never been instructed to put a cross in the box, because I don't think I've ever seen him do it this season. I think I could count on one hand the number of left-footed crosses that Cade Cowell has swung in, and I have absolutely no idea why that's the case, because clearly they're trying to make those with Christian Espinoza. And I have no idea why because Cade taking his defender on 1v1 and cutting inside is just not producing results, right? It's just he does that every time. He's not really able to sort out his feet, and he's not putting in good shots on target. The one time he did that tonight, it looked like he could, and then he dribbled a weak shot right into Dane St. Clair. If Cade could just take a touch to the byline and put a cross in, I think the Quakes would have a ton more goals. That's what Shea Salinas did every time. Shea Salinas wasn't some magician on the ball, but he knew what he was going to do. He knew he was going to fake inside, go to the byline and put a cross. It's not that difficult. And I don't know why that it seems like it's never crossed anyone's mind that Cade could do that. And I think that would give the Quakes a kind of new option going forward, and it would solve maybe some of those issues with the service in the box and the lack of delivery on that service.
Yeah. Well, I think if there's as the night to pick on Cade, tonight's probably not the night. Very clearly his best game on the pitch for the San Jose Earthquakes since the Sporting Kansas City game, in which he had an assist and a secondary assist and was involved in all 3 goals on that particular night. I want to go to the penalty shout, because this was brought up in the chat, and I think for very good reason. I saw it myself. Alex, what in the world? How in the world do? And look, again, I have to keep saying this. I think if you are relying on the referees to be able to get results, you're in for a rough time anyway. So look, there's a bit of a luck thing. I get it, but how does he get contact to the face? How does he get his shirt grabbed? How does he fall down and have 2 players sandwich him? And did that even get looked at on the monitor?
I agree with you, Jamon. Again, I think it's important. I'm glad you contextualized it. Minnesota United had a goal ruled out that I don't think should have been ruled out. That was a very, very like harsh and an unlucky goal for Minnesota United to have ruled out, because Timu Pukki was onside on that play. It was a great ball by Reynoso. And I mean, the handball that they called it back for was really unlucky. It was right. His arm was right next to his body. It was from point blank range.
And I didn't see this part of the game.
It didn't do much. I think Minnesota were unlucky to have that called back. So I think the luck evens out for the Earthquakes here. With that said, that was absolutely a foul on Cade Cowell in the first half. Valentin obstructed him with his arms, brought him down in the box, grabbed his throat, and it should have been a penalty. And I was able to do some reporting.
The fans don't care for your opinion on this. They're saying he stuck his shoulder out. His arm was not next to his body.
There's no
intentional.
Jamon, there's no winning when it comes to...
I didn't see it, Alex. It's just you against the fans.
There's no winning when it comes to trying to analyze these referee decisions. I completely empathize with Andrew Wiebe, because he has to do that every week for MLS and gets so much stick for it every week. What the fans might appreciate is I at least tried to find an answer for this one. We are allowed as reporters to submit pool questions.
I was going to ask if you were going to do that.
That's what I've been showing off, Jamon. We were allowed in a very old-fashioned and analog. Jackie's agreeing with me. I appreciate you, Jackie, for agreeing with me on this call. I was waiting for somebody to stick out for me. Anyways, I was allowed to ask a pool question, very analog. I had to write it down, sign my name at the bottom, Alex Morgan from Quakes Epicenter, and then we had to have the Quakes go and shuttle it into the referee locker room.
Oh, that's great that you did that.
So I asked, what did you see in the Valentin challenge on Cade Cowell in the box in the 21st minute? Why no penalty? And maybe this is a lesson learned. Maybe I should have been more specific. Maybe I should have asked more follow-up questions. But the answer that I got back was the referee did not identify any foul offense in the contact between both players. So that is the official response from the referees. There was 3 players.
He got contact from 2 players.
They didn't bother to explain it, is the end result. But we tried to do digging there. They did, I believe.
I think we're getting Luchi. We're getting Luchi now.
They didn't choose to send the rest of the monitor, but they did pause time.
Joined by head coach Luchi Gonzalez. We will start with a question in Spanish from Paula Marie.
Muy buenas noches, Luchi. ¿Cómo el equipo se ajustó a la intensidad del segundo tiempo y cómo se manejaron las oportunidades? ¿Qué piensa del gol de Cowell tan oportuno después dándole la confianza al equipo para poder seguir? Gracias.
De mucho ataque de los dos equipos, por la calidad y el querer imponer, ¿no? Ofensivamente. Muy orgulloso de Cade tener su gol. Sentimos en la semana, en su trabajo, en su mentalidad, y ahora va a ir con la selección, pero sentimos que el gol venía. El gol venía y yo sé que fue un disparo de lejos y fue una, how do you say deflection? How do you say deflection in Spanish? ¿Cómo se dice deflection? Anybody want to help?
Reflexión, reflexión.
Deflexión, así se dice. Deflection. Bueno, un gol, pero gol es gol y lo mereció y orgulloso de él. Es un chico lindo que quiere trabajar por el equipo y mejorar y tiene gran futuro con un esfuerzo así y tuvo buen partido. Y se enseña que si sigues disparando y trabajando, el gol puede venir. O sea que me encanta que metió su gol. Muy, muy feliz para él.
And then Paula, do you have a follow-up question in Spanish?
Sí, claro que sí. Como ganaron un punto y eso les va a ayudar a ustedes para continuar para el próximo partido. ¿Y qué fue lo que más les gustó desde el equipo de las oportunidades que se manejaron? Y se vieron muchos chances de gol, ¿cierto? Gracias.
Sí, mira, un punto positivo que nos ayuda a sumar, no ideal. Estamos decepcionados no tener 3 puntos en casa. No estamos satisfechos si no son 3 puntos, especialmente después de una derrota contra el Galaxy acá. O sea que había mucha urgencia de nosotros tratar de ganar esta noche y bueno, no se dio, pero lo mínimo es para nosotros sumar puntos y el empate. También vimos los otros resultados de otros equipos, o sea que nos pone en una posición para seguir en el objetivo.
We will now go to questions in English, starting with Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Luchi. Thanks for talking with us. It feels like a bit of the progressiveness has kind of gone out of the central midfield. It seemed like you were emphasizing that very heavily early in the season. And while we don't have up to chalkboard to be able to look at this particular game, it feels like there's a lot more just shuttling the ball out to the wings and letting the wings do the creating tonight. And when there might have been opportunities to play a little bit more direct around the box, what are your thoughts in terms of, some of the aggressiveness that you were asking the central midfielders to do, and that being something that we saw a lot more early in the season than we've seen more recently? Thank you.
Muted.
Yeah, look, I think the team has its profiles of players, right? Like this team has a base, a foundation that as a coach inheriting from last season into this season and learning about them in a preseason and then having our evolution right throughout the season. But one of the things that, with Jamon Monteiro is that he liked to come kind of lower. And so we could easily do that and allow or be okay with him just coming in low positions, getting touches and being connected to the back line in the build up with Jackson, with Gressa, with others. But we felt as we progressed, like we were missing maybe someone next to Jabo, someone next to Cade, someone next to Christian to be between the lines, behind their midfield, get in the box, be dangerous. And I think that's been the evolution. It's just having Mito in a higher position, connected to the front line, and having freedom to help us build the attack, whether central or wide. We're still getting sweet passes through the lines and bounces between the lines, but yes, we are rotating the ball and switching it with diags and attacking the flanks with number overloads and winger bounces. That's intentional. We feel like some of our biggest strengths is our ability to progress wide with speed and combinations and have Mito kind of find his pick and choose his moments. So that's been the evolution based on the profile of our players and how we feel we can compete and be dangerous offensively.
Next, we'll go to Alex Morgan.
Yeah, thanks for speaking with us tonight, Luchi. I want to follow up on that point that you're making about having Jamiro play a little bit higher up and be able to find his spots. Because in the second half, you guys were able to get the ball into the final third very often, and had a ton of good opportunities in the box. But me and Jamon were talking, and to us, it felt like there's a little bit of a gap at the top of the box. And there are not a ton of shots coming from the top of the box, and there are not a ton of runs made at the top of the box when the ball bounces out there. Because it feels like Jamiro Monteiro maybe likes to find those pockets more in the half spaces and the wider channels. And I'm curious if that's something that you're thinking about, if that's something that you're trying to fix. I know earlier in the season, Jackson Ewell was actually getting more into those spaces, and it feels like he's a little bit pushing up there and looking for shots less often when he's with the ball at the top of the box. So I'm curious how you're thinking about, Jamon likes to call it the zone 14, how you're thinking about that space and the runs in that space.
Yeah, we work on positions. We call it positions while attacking, right? In terms of like, is it a 2-3, 3-2 with your center backs and your midfield? So as we attack, and we want 3+ in the box, certain moments, 4+ in the box, but then we need to have a shape. Positions while attacking. I thought we had a much better positions while attacking second half to neutralize Reynoso compared to the first half. I mean, the first goal comes from a poor positions while attacking where we didn't reference. We're on the wrong side of him, and he's able to thread a pass with Pookie in behind. And so I thought we did that better second half, our positions while attacking. And in that is a shape, but it can be aggressive or it can be conservative and dropped off. So I do agree with the point that it can be more aggressive, right? It can definitely be much more aggressive and much closer to their box. And what that'll allow to do is help us recover the ball when we're getting across. So in a second phase after cross, are we picking it up top of the box? Are we picking it up on our back line? But can we get that 3-2, 2-3 closer to the box with mids near and top to the top of the box? And so that's something that we ourselves as well don't want to keep tightening up and closing, but when you play good teams, it's not easy either. And Jackson and Gressel putting in a good shift. If you look at their GPS numbers, they're up and back, they're shifting a lot, they're putting defensive efforts, closing things down, covering each other, defensive pivoting. So that's another element that I do agree we can keep improving. But as the coach, we can't make everything perfect, but I do think we have opportunities to not just be effective with a early cross behind the back line, a penalty spot, cutback cross, but also some cutback cross top of the box, or it's just rebounds or second phase actions. And Miguel scored some goals and kind of that idea. And why not do it with our mids more often? I agree with your point.
We'll close with a final question from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Luchi, thanks for taking a second question. I want to talk a little bit about these international call-ins. First off, Cade Cowell tonight, 5 shots, a goal, 3 on target. Feels like his best offensive production night since Sporting Kansas City earlier in the season at home. And clearly a goal hopefully will give him some confidence. But you also have his international call-in as well as others coming up. And that has an opportunity with the travel to also put more of a load on the team. So, what are you thinking in terms of your rotation strategy with these types of call-ins, and who's going to be competing for that starting position on the left side in Cade's absence? Thanks.
Muted.
Yeah, look, we're gonna see what. Obviously, we try to track our next opponent. We start our process 2 weeks in advance, so we've already kind of have some basic idea of DC, and then we'll get into the details this week. But DC is a team that they performed really well tonight, obviously, in their result. We know that they like certain formations, and Benteke is a very dangerous target, as he showed tonight. And having Cade is a player that vertically can hurt anybody, especially away if we're absorbing and playing in mid and lower blocks at times in the game. So, we'll miss his verticality, we'll miss his speed. I'm really happy again for him to get his goal tonight. Really proud of him, and he's wanted it bad, and anything can happen when you're shooting on frame and with a deflection, and goal's a goal. So, and I will mention this with Cade, that should have been a PK today. So, to me, it's unacceptable that wasn't a PK. Seeing the video replay, there's not just one but 2 fouls and a touch. There's contact on his face, and to me, it's unacceptable, especially with a newer ref to this league, to not get him to look at the VAR. What I don't understand what they're doing up in the booth and what they're seeing that's not clear and obvious a PK. I don't understand that. To me, it's unacceptable, and I think they need to be held accountable for not making a correct call. There's no it's clear. I don't see how you debate the other way. It's clear. They need to do their job better. And if not, they need to be held accountable because that's really poor. We should be up 2-1, right? And I'm proud of our guys to actually keep composure because that's just such a bad non-call.
Unmuted.
I think
These are margins. And I'm going to make that statement that, it has to be better. It has to be better on the booth.
I think
Luchi, what do you think accountability looks like there?
What does it
Muted.
look like? A hand in his face and a pull on his body and the frame of his body from behind the ball. The ball was already beat. The ball beat both players.
I understand the foul. I mean, what do you think accountability for the referees?
Oh, I
looks
don't.
like?
Like it's done. They're human beings, right? They made a mistake, but just maybe they shouldn't be in the booth. Maybe they should not be in as many games until they can raise their standard. I don't know. I don't know. There needs to be better. It needs to be better. That's all. And I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed that we don't get that call. We don't
Unmuted.
get that call. We should have got that call. And I'm, me, guys. I don't talk about this much. I don't talk about this much, but it has to be called. En español, eso es penal en Cade. Simple, penal en Cade. Para mí no es aceptable no llamar un penal. Muy, muy obvio, claro y obvio. Y arriba en el VAR deben hacer esa llamada. Y si no lo hacen bien, que hay
Muted.
una consecuencia, que no deben tener el próximo partido que están asignados. Porque para mí, lo mismo con nosotros. Si tenemos multa a los profes, los jugadores, o nosotros tenemos suspensión porque no hicimos algo bien o mal, lo mismo con los árbitros. Tiene que mejorar eso. Porque hoy debemos estar 2-1 ganando en mitad y estos son márgenes y diferencias y ponemos la vida en la cancha y la gente tiene que ser mejor en ese trabajo. Y mínimo en un árbitro nuevo, new ref to the league, let them go to the VAR. Let them go to the VAR and make that call. That's the minimum that should happen. So, I'm sorry to get off track, guys, but, yeah, we need our depth to step up. I thought we handled that much better in our last FIFA call-up when we were missing guys. We didn't handle it so well the first window, but I thought we did it better the second. And then we got Jack Scahan coming back from an injury to see where he's at. Benji Kikanovic, who's competing. Matthew Hoppy's competing. Ayo can even play in a wing. I don't even know our formation yet against DC, so let's, we might need something different. But, and you have Paul Marie coming back from suspension. He's played fullback, wing back. So we'll have our options, and whether it's verticality or between the lines, I'm confident in the group to be ready to go to DC and compete with or without a Cade and others.
Luchi, for what it's worth, we submitted a pool question to the referees and did not get any sort of explanation of the Cade Cowell no call or why it didn't go to VAR.
Yeah, I mean, you guys saw it, so it's we're fighting for our lives out here. This is a well-being. We want to do the best for our families and our fans, and when we don't get those calls, it's just really disappointing. And if you guys know me, I don't want to, we're not victims. We don't feel sorry for ourselves. I'm not here to bicker about little things that we can't control, but this is one that they got wrong, that needed to get right. And I thought it was clear for them they had the opportunity to get it right, and they didn't.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. That concludes tonight's post-game press conference.
Good night, guys.
All right. Spicy, Luchi. That was probably the most interesting press conference we've had in some time. Him addressing the Cade Cowell situation, giving us a good sense maybe for who's competing for that. Alex, I was just telling the fans as you were pulling back in here, probably the spiciest, most interesting press conference we'd had from Luchi Gonzalez. Maybe ever. It's been quite some time at least.
I tried to jump in there and make it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to mention to him about the pool thing. You jumped in there and made your own clarification. So I was going to say that we submitted the pool question, that we agreed with him, about it. Just maybe he'd feel a little bit better. But I also kind of wanted to ask him about the Pookie handball situation as well, because you're kind of right. In some ways, both teams got a bit unlucky there, or whether it's unlucky or not, like luck could have gone the other way, and we could have found ourselves in a 2-1 or 2-2 contest if those things are called, right?
And look, I think if you're looking at the Cade Cowell call, Luchi Gonzalez is 100% right. That should have been a penalty. That should have been sent to VAR. the referee was, I think, waiting for it to get sent to VAR, waiting for the check in the booth, and I think probably was surprised that he didn't get sent to VAR. So I think he's absolutely right about that call. Where I kind of get stuck is that I think the luck tends to balance out on those calls. I think that, you know, Minnesota United would be equally upset with the goal that's pulled back. And I think that I don't actually, like, it's one thing to vent frustration, and I understand Luchi Gonzalez doing it, but that's why I jumped in and tried to ask, what does accountability look like? Because I don't know if there's a good solution for that. And the only thing that he seemed to mention was just have these referees stop refereeing MLS games. I don't actually think that's like a great structure for accountability. Maybe the one thing that he said about younger referees getting sent to VAR more often is something that's actionable. But I generally think that most of these complaints are not actionable, and they're not productive complaints about the referees, and it's more venting frustration. So, you know, I want to give Luchi Gonzalez a little bit of empathy here for you know, understanding that is.
I think the fans like it, though. I think the fans like it.
Sure, I understand that it's entertaining. I don't know if it's really productive.
John Jay said he was going to say it in every language. I'm just like, how many more languages does he know that he can say it in?
Yeah.
Maybe he switched to Portuguese. I wouldn't even know it, honestly, if he switched to Portuguese in the middle of that.
Yeah. So we'll see. I like seeing Luchi Gonzalez at his more fiery. And I really appreciate the dialogue that we had in the press conference tonight. I like the
so let's get back to the tactical
Luchi
conversation, because look, we don't make any bones about it. This show is a bit more about analysis than it is about fandom, right? And trying to really kind of analyze the way that the San Jose Earthquakes play soccer on a night-to-night basis and across the season, and, you know, where they're at in different positions, and what, you know, what they need to do. And we did get some kind of answers, I think, you know, in taking it on. And thanks for throwing me under the bus there about Zone 14. But that's, I mean, Zone 14.
I wanted to invite Luchi into our conversations.
He knows about Zone 14. I got no concerns as being a disciple, let's say, of Greg Berhalter. I'm very, very certain he knows Zone 14. But I think we you know, you asked him about Montero, and he kind of, in the way that he kind of plays in the half spaces, and he kind of took that on, and also gave a bit more about what he's expecting when they do get in behind, when they play, and he called it the cutback cross, and a couple of different times there. You know, this is the first time we've actually gotten him to talk about what the expectation is. And he is saying, hey, you're right. There does need to be somebody at the top of the box. There does need to be somebody on the penalty dot. So at least that part is right. I just want to see a near post run, for crying out loud, you know, when those are being taken far enough back.
Look, I very much appreciate the dialogue that we had with Luchi Gonzalez. I thought his answer to your question was fantastic. I loved the way he was going in depth about the role that Jamir Montero has had this season and how it's evolved. I was a little bit surprised by the way he described that evolution. He was very clearly saying that Luchi Gonzalez, that he wanted Jamir Montero to be playing higher, to be pushing the back line more, to be getting further up the field, and that he's done that more in the second half of the season. I'm surprised that he finds that to be a feature and not a bug. I'm really surprised that he sees that as growth, because it does feel like Jamir Montero has gotten less productive as the season has gone on, that he's gotten more disconnected from Ewan Guerreiro, and that's caused a big gap in the midfield that we were describing tonight. So I'm very surprised that he sees that as growth. And I would question sort of that read of Jamir Montero's development and whether that's productive for this team. But I'm super like grateful for him having that dialogue in the press conference and going in depth. And I'm going to be honest, I don't want to give myself too much credit, Jamon, but that might be the first sort of press conference interaction that I have ever had in which I feel like the question that I asked might have been vaguely helpful or made the coach see the game in a way that they weren't considering in that moment, because he seemed to agree with the kind of place where we got, which is that Jamir Montero is not at the top of the box and nobody's right at the top of the box for those chances. And he seemed to understand that criticism and to hear that and to take that into consideration. And I think that, he given what he said, it's very clear that the Quakes don't have anybody at the top of the box, and that that's something that they need to fix.
Yeah, this is not to be dismissive of Luchi's in-depth reply to our responses, but Martin, I think, kind of summed it up fairly nicely here, which is to, he's very clearly feels more confident from what we got in the personnel on the wings making decisions in the final third than the players who he's got in the midfield. And this is the first indication that I've gotten that he probably agrees with us that he would like that creative midfielder, and he's trying to turn Montero to the extent that he can into that player. And he's kind of also saying, I'm trying this, but it's not really clicking the way that I would like it to. And I feel like he kind of like came around to saying something along those lines. What was your interpretation?
Oh, I think the most telling moment was when he said Jack Skane's coming back soon from injury. Yeah. Thank the Lord. Because he knows Jack Skane is the guy who's worked for him in that position, and that Jack Skane is the answer there. Jack Skane's the guy that he's been trying to, you don't need to turn Montero into that guy if you already have Jack Skane, right? And so I just think Jack Skane fits really well. And I'm surprised he let that slip. He seemed very, very ready for Jack Skane to come back. And I think there's hope that Jack Skane will be returning to play shortly after the injuries that he's had.
Yeah, hopefully maybe as early as DC United. So, by the way, the plant over here, I think, is what King Farouk is talking about here. This is I'm in a hotel lobby right now. I am dropping my son off for college. I only watched, for those who joined late, I only watched maybe 15 minutes of the first half, the last 10 minutes of this particular game. I just so happened to see some of the more interesting elements of the game.
And you know what? Nobody has been able to tell. Everybody's forgotten that, and nobody's been able to tell. Because as I said, your intuition is spot on, Jamon.
Who waters this plant is what I'm trying to say.
Jamon, here's that old commercial that Cristiano Ronaldo did, where he put a cross in the box and then they turned off the lights in this big, I think it was like ESPN Sports Science or one of those things. They put in a cross, and right as the player was kicking it, right after they kicked it, they turned off the lights in the warehouse, and Ronaldo had to finish the cross. And because he has such good instincts, he can read the player's body language, read the trajectory of the ball.
Back when Ronaldo was good.
Back when Ronaldo was playing in Europe, yes. He was able to head the ball in the back of the net. He's able to volley it. He was able to hit it with his shoulder. I'm making the analogy. That's what you do with the Quakes. You only needed to watch the first 15 minutes to know the trajectory of this match, and just to make sure everything had gone as you expected. The final 15 minutes. So I know we're getting over an hour here. So I appreciate you for joining us again, and we can probably circle back here to wrap up, Jamon.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that? Normally, this is where we would say, final thoughts, and we would give our final thoughts. And before we go into that, of course, we'd love it if people would check out our Patreon. I'll be quite honest, just to kind of level with everyone. We have seen a bit, of a dip. Sometimes that happens when the team is not performing quite as well. And neither Alex nor I have been in a position to do a lot of writing this year, so we understand that as well. But if you like the Aftershock, if you appreciate this show, and if you would like for us to be able to bring you the type of on-field post-game show that we were able to do the other night, if this team makes the playoffs, or Decision Day might be another really good opportunity to do something like that. If you enjoyed that type of coverage, that type of level of professionalism that only Alex Morgan, Robert Jonas, and Philip Leyva, and then I'm kind of the clown, but I'll show up too. But if you like it, if you like being able to get that, and you'd like to be able to get that for the playoffs, $2 a month says, hey, I like you guys. I know you're not writing a lot of articles right now, but I enjoy the show. $5 gets you access into the game Slack, the patron Slack, and you get the game chat access. And I have to imagine tonight, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't gotten to see the Slack yet. I'm going to probably be entertained by it tomorrow, but it had to be popping off at that Cade Cowell penalty shot. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you'll be entertained by the Slack.
I'll be entertained by the Slack.
Jamon's in charge of the financials, so I don't know what's happening behind the scenes.
And Nate's really in charge of the finances.
What I can say is that the patron Slack is as strong and as fun and as thriving as ever. We still have, I think it's up to 125 people strong now in the patron Slack. It's where it happens. I don't tweet during games anymore. I unload all of my excess intrusive thoughts onto the Patreon Slack about the earthquakes. So would love to see everyone there. I was able to meet Monty tonight, who's been a longtime listener of the Aftershock in the stadium, and so
That's
it's
great.
lovely to see all of the fantastic folks who listen to this show and watch this show, and we'd love to be able to talk with you more and answer your questions throughout the week on the Patreon. So encourage everyone to subscribe to that. It's worth your money.
Normally all the comments are for you, Alex, and somehow I did something decent tonight, and the fans are giving me a little bit of love. So I don't get that as often as you do. I don't think. I think they tend to side with your more negativity sometimes around.
Jamon, are you insecure about the commenters?
Yeah, I'm the heel of the show. I've always embraced the heel role, so I expect them to come at me.
Jamon, they love you just as much. Come on, you might get some stick every now and again for talking about Zone 14 and XG. But I secretly think they love it. I secretly think
they were ragging on XG earlier in the show, so I saw that going on too. Yeah. But that's fine. Hey, bring your comments to the show. All that we care is that you are here. So thank you, fans, for joining in tonight. If you can't afford the $2, look, it costs nothing to subscribe, to like, turn on the notifications, and be part of the Aftershock after every single post game. We are always here. Alex was just about to do a solo show tonight because it's Labor Day weekend and everything is going on, and he is at the stadium, and he's like, Jamon, you don't have to show up. I will do solo. It'd be the first.
I was going to go Mark Goldbridge style. I was looking forward to it, guy. I want to hear in your comments and Jamon, tonight's show has been fantastic. I'm so glad you were able to
also, we've got the plant for the appearance tonight. But so.
I don't know how people would react to. I was ready to go Mark Goldbridge style solo out here and see what happens. But glad that you were here tonight so we can talk about Jamiro Montero and unpack some of those moments. Alex is a one-man band. I don't know about that. We're a tag team. We're a duo.
All right. Well. So here's one thing for fans to keep in mind. I do want to, this is not necessarily Jamon trying to be positive. It's Jamon trying to say, like, here's the reality of the situation. The playoff line is going to be at 43 or 44 points, most likely. It's not a promise, but if you look at the probabilities, they are extremely high, around 43 and 44 points right now. Could be one, could be the other. That's the point line. In order to get there, the Quakes probably need to get a minimum of 2 wins plus a draw or 2, or 3 wins. So regardless of how they get it, it didn't have to be tonight. It didn't have to be against the Galaxy. 3 wins, any way they can get it, will probably get them into the playoffs. That's what you need to track. It doesn't matter if it's tonight. Doesn't matter if it's against DC. It doesn't matter at home. It doesn't matter on the road. 3 points anyway, or 3 wins any way you can get it. And I feel fairly confident that this team will be in the playoffs. I've simulated the season 10,000 times over and over and over and over again. And I feel very, very good about those numbers. So, Alex, no win at home tonight. But hey, DC United is a team that has been up and down and has performed poorly at home at times this season. Not tonight. They performed great at home, as already Luchi knew in the press conference. But that's the next opportunity for this team.
Look, a draw doesn't help this team. I said it at the top of the show. A draw for the playoffs really doesn't matter right now. Their playoff odds go down with a draw. They need wins, and they were very close tonight in that second half. If Dane St. Clair is 1 centimeter away from the Cade Cowell shot from the Jeremy Abobasi header, then this is a completely different result for the Quakes. They get a win. They're basically in the playoffs at that point. They only really need 1 win to get them right to the brink, 2 wins to get them in. I think that I think that they're in a good spot right now. They just need a ball to bounce their way, and they need to be able to finish in the box, which is what we've been talking about, Jamon. So I think that they're so close at this point, and they have 7 games left that they have enough time. If they come back to PayPal Park in a few weeks and they still need 2 to 3 wins, that's when I'd start to worry more. But I'd give them an opportunity on the road against DC to see what they can do.
I think it's going to be a game where if they come with the right set frame of mind, they come with the right level of effort. It's always tough going all the way to the East Coast, but it is a place where they can get a result. And this team has gotten a couple weird road results this season, playing poorly. Imagine if Daniel shows up and they play well, it'd give them a good chance to be able to come back home with 3 points. So, Alex, from the stadium, I appreciate you, everything you do. You and I like to get into it sometimes, but you've been there for all summer long, and some good news for the fans. You're going to be able to continue through the rest of the season at the stadium. So, looking forward to hearing more. Thoughts go to our poor Robert Jonas tonight, who, due to a personal emergency, was not able to join us. And we hope everything will turn out well in his particular situation.
Robert is okay. I think his car, on the other hand,
not so much.
The tires or the battery might need a little bit of love. So we'll send him love in that direction. And there was some rain tonight, so I'm hoping that he didn't have to stick out there in the rain for too long. That was unexpected. Made the ground a little wet and slippery here in San Jose tonight. But I appreciate Robert. Appreciate everyone who makes this happen.
Yeah, we also want to thank Luchi Gonzalez for taking a fine tonight in order to entertain the fans on the show. For Alex, I'm Jamon. Have a good night, everyone. We will see you again next week on the Aftershock. Take care.